That's it. So yes, there are Somalis who will complain and say, you know, how dare you? You're a woman. You're not supposed to be showing your face in public, or how dare you sing like that with such a nice voice? You should only read Quran in that voice, and never say anything else. And so, but and then you hear stories about other young people will get in touch with you and say, you know, I don't even speak Somali, but I understand what you're saying, and you made me proud, and thank you so much. So you just, anybody who wants to, there's a Somali mahmad that says, Nindu banqati ilaq dalbi. You put yourself out there. I mean, you have to have a thick skin, you know, and so.
I think you're damned if you don't. You have to control your own narrative, and otherwise someone else will control it for you, and that's where the piracy movies come from, that's where the terrorism movies come from, and you don't want to associate, you know what I mean, like, you don't want the connotation Somali to be terrorists. So I think you have to go out there and explain to people that there is no single narrative. Maybe I'm sharing mine. Yes, you hear the negative comments, but there's an overwhelmingly amount of positive comments every day, just like reading through people saying that it's so inspirational to see you do something that maybe traditionally you haven't done before. You know, there's an entire new generation that are either born in the Western world, I'll say like the States or the UK, who now are part of mainstream culture and part of that culture. So it's important for them to bring that experience, being Somali American, being Somali British, to the table. Yes, negative comments will come, but if you ask any group of people, whether it be even, I don't know, Britney Spears, you ask any pop culture, anyone who puts themselves out there is going to be subject to criticism. It's human nature to criticize. But I think that it's not damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's just damned if you don't. Like, you have to get out there and control your narrative, otherwise someone else will do it for you.
You have to be very, very thick-skinned as well. People will have opinions, and you have to understand that they've got their opinions, and you can't just say, no, you can't have your opinion. This is what I do, and what I do is right. You just have to explain to them, yes, you can have your opinion, but let me show you my side of things. And I think that's the best way to get ourselves across to other people and tell them that we are from a very beautiful country that has a very, very, very beautiful history.
Well, we've got an incredibly supportive crowd here, so with this crowd, you can never go wrong. Somaha. That's my trust in you. So I'm sure that you have a lot to contribute, lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, lots of questions, so I'm going to open it up to you now. And if you wouldn't mind, we'll take a collection of questions so that we can maximize and optimize our time. And who should we start off with? And I'm going to have to ask you to come to the microphone, if that's okay, so that we can all hear you. So, first intervention. Yes, of course, please come forward.
Yeah, very brief, sorry. It's just something Kauser said. You said you get to choose the people you interview, right? And the stories you do. And I remember it was a few years ago when I was in journalism school, in the introduction class, the professor asked a question, and it stuck with me to this day. It said, can journalism ever be objective, right? And all of us were focused on what you're doing after you've chosen the story. And we're like, you know, the people she's interviewing, the story she's doing, and what you don't realize is objectivity happens even before, because you chose the people you want to interview, the stories you want to cover. That in itself tells you, you know, are you attractive or not? And for you saying that, it stuck with me, and I just had to make your comment, so thank you.
That's a great point you brought up. Sorry, real quick, that's a great point you brought up, because everyone has implicit bias. So you try to stay as objective as you can, but we all have our biases. But again, that's why you want people with different experiences who see things through a different lens to be at the table, because it's not even about how we cover stories, it's how we select stories to begin with. So you're right, it's a great point you brought up that, you know, I pick and choose who I want to interview and how I cover the story, but from the beginning, I choose the story and I fight for it to make sure that it's covered to begin with. So.
If I can add something to that.
Sorry.
when I was working for Voice of America, I had to cover a story about this young Somali girl who was stoned to death by Al-Shabaab. And I remember when the stringer, the journalist, the reporter who was reporting the story from Kismayo, when she called and told us the story, and I had to actually interview her. I was literally shaking. You know, this 15-year-old girl was raped, and then she went to the authority. That's what authorities, which was Al-Shabaab at the time. This is 2008, and she was made an example. She was brought to public, you know, in the middle of the city, and was actually stoned to death. And so I had the chance to be able to interview the head of Al-Shabaab in Kismayo at the time. And I was just so mad. And I was, on the one hand, I mean, I was trying to remain objective. But, you know, it's very, very hard sometimes, you know, very, very hard because, you know, there are certain things that no matter how hard you try to, that make it very, very difficult for you to, you know, remain objective. And so, I mean, you're right. You try to do your best, but we all have our own biases.
Maybe one thing. You know, that story, I'll tell you a funny story about that. About 3 years ago, I wrote a play for that, about her story, because I wanted to highlight the horrors. Yeah, Aisha. And I went to this big theatre company, huge, I'm not going to name it. So, and we wrote it, and we want to make it very kind of passionate, but also kind of tell the story of how the Somali people at that day in that stadium fought against, try to stop her, like the Al-Shabaab from killing her. And apparently they shot fires and stuff like that, to the point where I wanted to make it as honest as possible, make our people look like we're not savages. There were people fighting to save her, but this theatre company decided to edit that bit out. They wanted to show the horror of us. So I ripped up the contract. I was like, I'm not doing that, you know, and it's a bit of a shame that we can never show that truth, you know. It has to be watered down into their own way. But it was a powerful story, and one day I'd love to do it, but it was a very frustrating experience. You know?
We're gonna do it.
We'll do it, yeah, you do it, you do it.
I think that has got you fired up. Yes.
I can be loud.
Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, thanks to each and every one of you for what you do.